Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Today is Tuesday, January 11th, 2022. Pursuant to Governor Baker's June 16th, 2021 order extending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Master General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 18, to allow for remote meeting participation until April 1st of 2022. This January 11th, 2022 meeting, Select Board meeting is being conducted via remote participation by the board, is being recorded by Westwood Media. And you'll be able to view that at a later date if you're not viewing it live. Under the chairman's update, we only have one thing, although I'm gonna add something anyway. But anyway, today we have the John Cronin Award. Public Service Award is being out there, and we are accepting nominations. This award is named for the late John J. Cronin, who was town treasurer for many years, who selflessly gave of his time and for the betterment of the community, both as an elected official and numerous volunteer activities within and outside the community. The past recipients were Bob Delisle last year. Before that, Steve Rasky, Michael Crone in 2019, Mr. Ahern in 2018, and Mr. Gavin in 2017. Nomination forms are available online at the town's website, or you can contact the Select Board office at via email at selectboard@townhall.westwood.ma.us. All nominations will be submitted to the Select Board, the Westwood Town Hall, and will be presented at the 2022 Spring Annual Town Meeting. If you have any questions, you can contact Trish at the Select Board. Also, today is the first day that you can pull nomination papers. If you plan on running for a town office, they are available as of today. And I understand there are already several people at the office today. So there are several positions available. They are posted on the town website, on the town clerk under elections. And if you are interested, you should pull your papers. They must be returned no later than March 8th. The last day to pull papers would be March 3rd of 2022. So with that, we have scheduled action this evening. Under our first, we have an update from the Board of Health. And with that, we have Roger Christensen joining us, and Jared, I know you're here, Jared. I don't know if Roger's joining us, but I know Jared has an update, just had a meeting prior to our meeting this evening. So Jared, welcome, and take us away on what the latest update for the Board of Health in Westwood will be.
Oh, thank you for having me. Dr. Christian is scheduled to join us, so we just left our meeting a few minutes ago, so he might be running a little bit behind, but
he's here now.
Okay, great. So I don't know if he wants to cover the vote on the municipal building mask order, or he wants me to take it.
Roger, would you like to take that, or would you like Jared to continue?
All right, Jared does a good job, so we'll let him continue. We had a good discussion, though.
Thank you. So the Board of Health met this evening and voted unanimously to institute a face covering mandate for all residents aged 5 years or older and any visitors to municipal buildings effective at 12:01 a.m. On January 13th. So that'll give town offices and town staff a day to prepare. But when we open up for business on the 13th, anyone entering the building will be required to wear a face covering, which covers their nose and their mouth. It extends to anyone who's over the age of 5, unless you have a medical condition or a disability, which makes wearing a mask difficult or a challenge or a threat to your health. And it carves out an exemption for employees that have an office where they're the only person, a private office, or if you have 2 members sharing an office space who are able to stay 6 feet apart, then those employees would not be required to mask at those times. So this will mostly be when there's close contact interaction between staff members or between staff and the public. In an effort to quell the spread of the Omicron variant, we want everybody to mask up.
Okay. And Jared, is there a stop date, or is this just open-ended at this point in time until decided at a later date?
We have a tentative end date of Sunday, the 27th of February. and that's until revised or rescinded. So we're paying very careful attention to Omicron and our numbers. We're heading towards what we think is the peak. So obviously, as we talked about in previous meetings, you run up the hill and you walk down. So cases hopefully are going to peak in the next 7 to 14 days, but we'll have a prolonged period of time where we'll still have a pretty significant level of transmission. So we're targeting the end of February. Should cases return to a more manageable level, then the order would just expire on its own. If by some circumstance cases really fall off the table when the board meets in February for their regular meeting, we would have the opportunity to revise or rescind at that point.
Excellent, thank you. All right, any questions from John or Rob? No?
Jared, yeah, does that only mean municipal buildings? Where do schools fall on that? Does that cover schools or no?
So schools would be covered under the DESE guidelines for mask mandates, which was extended by DESE until February 28th. They have some provisions there. Ultimately the position of the board is that, we're there to advise the school committee on public and health policy with respect to the variant. So ultimately, their decisions need to be made by that committee, but we are certainly able to give the benefit of our knowledge and our experience, which I think, we've done proactively throughout. The school department does have a COVID task force, of which myself and our public health nurse are members. So as of right now, we're hoping their DESE timeline is Monday and ours is going to expire that Sunday. We're optimistic that that day can be maybe day one of removal for the schools that qualify.
Let's hope that's right. That's great.
I think we're all hoping. I mean, we're not, none of us want anything more than to be able to give our students back their experience in the building without the masks. So at this point, if we can all continue to be vigilant in our own endeavors health-wise for a little bit longer, hopefully Omicron will burn hot, burn bright, and fade away quickly.
Thank you, Jared. Thank you, Roger, for your hard work. I know it's trying, but we appreciate the hard work and the thoughtfulness you put into it. So thank you very much, and thank you for joining us.
Well,
Thank
we have
you.
we have a good public health agent in Jared, and he's done very well in leading us. So we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so moving along, next we have our Complete Streets Program funding award. Is Todd joining us this evening? Yes. I love when you shake your head, Tish, so I can see. All right, so Todd will be joining us, as well as Conrad. So, Todd,
I'm live right now.
yes, you got some more money for us. So always good to take money from the state whenever we get it. So why don't you tell
That's
us,
right.
share the good news with us.
Well, we received great news about 3 weeks ago that we were awarded our third Complete Streets grant. Since the program's been in existence, like I just said, it's our third time receiving this. It's been a tremendous benefit to the community to be able to use, this funding mechanism to help aid with just general improvements throughout the community. In the past, we've used it for sidewalk improvements, intersection improvements, and it's really, like I said, just been a great tool on top of the annual Chapter 90 allotment that we received to really make some significant impacts into our infrastructure in a very positive way. The most recent award that we just caught wind of was for $356,000, and that will fund the construction of a sidewalk approximately from Booth Drive up to Canton Street. We've been asked over the past week, why do we select certain locations throughout the community? We do have a prioritization list that we work off of, not necessarily that we go in order of 1 through 2 to 3 to 4, but we work off of it. We try to draw projects together. We've recently embarked on a sidewalk design along Canton Street, and felt like applying for this segment of Downey Street really bridged a gap where the infrastructure was lacking with respect to sidewalks. And bridging that gap really tells the story and will help us with our endeavor and in pursuing funding from the state to finally at some point in time get a sidewalk along the Canton Street corridor as well. So we're excited about this opportunity. Like I said, it's been a great program over the years. I don't know off the top of my head how many communities have already received 3, but I'd have to say we're in a very small percentage that have. So we're very excited about this.
Excellent. All right, I'm excited. So I see that segment all the time, and just so you know, Todd, I had nothing to do with that decision, right? Just so.
Absolutely not.
It is a great area. In fact, they were doing work along it this year for one of the utilities. But John or Rob, do you have any questions or concerns?
Oh, Todd, just thank you for all your efforts. And I did want to make note of how well the infrastructure throughout town looks after all the work you did last summer. The roads and the sidewalk improvements are amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you for your efforts.
Well, I
Thank
like
you,
that,
guys.
Todd, and now if we could just get Tresca to stop dumping cement on 109. and some of those-
That's the unfortunate. I feel like we're getting a call every few days for them dumping cement all over the place. But yeah, I mean, the projects that we completed this past summer, I mean, really made such an impact, and again, such a positive way to the community. It's something we were advertising was going to happen at the end of all the work being completed. And, without the select board support initially, great people like Pam and her team, individuals like Michelle Miller, procurement, and obviously the town support throughout the whole process, we would never get it done. But it just all came together, and, we just have a great team behind us, and someone like Brendan Ryan that's consistently out there day in and day out when the construction's taking place, and forming those relationships with the contractors really allow for a successful project from start to finish. So it's been great, and we're excited that the community's excited about what we've accomplished.
Excellent. Well, let's accept the money. John, you want to?
Oh, I'm sorry, Rob, can you make the motion?
I can. While I'm pulling that up, though, it looks like Chris has his hand up to say something.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Go ahead, Chris. What do you have to say?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that we've received numerous comments, emails, and phone calls from residents regarding the work, the road improvement work that the DPW has done, and also including the snow removal from the last storm. So I just wanted to make sure that the board's fully aware. I know many residents have grown accustomed to the hard work of the DPW and the way the roads are improved and the way the roads are plowed. But we're very appreciative for the very positive comments that we received from residents acknowledging the hard work of the men and women of the DPW.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Was that
All
enough
right.
time, Rob?
That was perfect. Thank you, Chris.
Sorry about that. I'm having some technical issues.
I will make a motion for the select board to accept the Tier 3 Complete Street Funding Award of $356,813 as awarded from the to the Department of Public Works.
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Hickey,
Aye.
Mr. Gotti,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Excellent. Todd, when do you think the work will begin?
Well, the initial work, we're going to have to embark on some design money. I've already spoken with Pam, and we're going to include it in our capital request for this coming spring ATM. So after that time frame, I mean, we're probably looking at design taking us through, I would say, late winter next year, maybe early spring, and then we'll look to bang out the project probably middle to late spring, early summerish, but it would be completed definitely before school began at the Downey School for the following year. So I would say by the end of August will be placed into place
Of 2023. Okay.
of 2023. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, moving along, we have our next thing on our agenda is the pavement management report. So this
Sure.
is the Department of Public Works, along with the Environmental Partners Group, LLC, to provide a pavement management report to the select board. So you're going to tell us how good our roads are and what needs to be improved.
We are going to brag a little bit more, but every 3 years we go in and we assess the conditions of our infrastructure. It's known as the ICR. It's an infrastructure condition rating that we receive, which in theory is just equivalent to a grade A, B, C, or D. We do this, like I said, every 3 years, and we're thrilled to report that our rating came in at an 87.20, which is one of the highest our consultant has ever seen, and actually improved upon our score of an 84 from a few years ago. As of about a few years ago, I inquired about, typically, not to compare us to other communities, but what the average is across the Commonwealth, and it ranges anywhere between the mid to high 60s to a very low 70. So as of a few years ago, being an 84 was pretty much off the charts. Being an 87 is just, it's an Ivy League of pavement rating. So we're again thrilled to see these great scores and the great results. It can be attributed to a number of things. We obviously get statewide Chapter 90 allotments annually, by which we receive about $540,000 a year. So it's managing that amount of money. But along with that, it's a townwide support, which includes the recently approved and completed road improvement bond. And again, that allowed our department to expand on our traditional annual summer paving projects and go above and beyond with some additional projects. Utilizing state offered programs such as Complete Streets obviously helps with our pavement rating as well. Aggressive bidding schedule. Again, I mentioned earlier, Pam and her entire team, along with Michelle Miller from the procurement office, and all of Brennan's hard work and time that he puts in paperwork wise and out in the field. Great timing with our bid documents, getting those out there successfully early on, and then consistently landing great contractors that our community has a great working relationship with. So it really is a combination of a lot of those bullet points that I made that then adds up into the network of roadway that we've established over the recent years to put us off the charts. I mean, again, in 87, I can't stress how high that is. This evening, we have Conrad Ledger here to give a brief overview of the pavement report that is provided in your packet. Conrad and I have worked for a number of years. He's been with the town for a number of years, providing our department with pavement preservation assistance over the years. And he too is a tremendous asset to the entire town, just helpful in all aspects of pavement management. So to that, I'll have Conrad give a brief overview of this, won't be long. And then if you guys have any questions afterwards, by all means.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Todd. So as Todd mentioned, I've been working with the town now for 5 or 6 years on the pavement management program. And today's report or the work that the town has put in on their pavement infrastructure makes my report pretty easy today. So we're going to I'm going to share my screen and give a very, very short presentation on the status of the roadway infrastructure here in town. And, just first off, in your packet, there is a pavement report card that gives you a general overview of where the town stands and what we're going to present today. So just wanted to mention that is what is in your packet. And, most of the contents of the presentation are in this 2-page document. So with that, I'll just give a brief overview of what pavement management is. So pavement management is the practice of planning pavement maintenance to maximize the value of your road network. So we go out, we do assessments, as Todd said, every 3 years or so here in Westwood, and we assess the infrastructure, and it enables us to perform the right repairs at the right time. So again, this is a very brief version of the presentation that we've given a number of times. So the inventory that we did late last year in 2021, we focused on the accepted roads here in town. So that's made up of arterials, collectors, local roads, and local low volume roads, which are dead ends or lightly traveled roadways. So the overall assessment incorporated about 87.1 miles of road. So the assessments were performed using artificial intelligence and a complete, it's using machine learning technology. So on the right-hand side is a picture of Hartford Street. So one of the benefits of using this technology is getting photographs every 10 feet along the road network as part of the deliverable. It's also non-biased and extremely cost-effective. So we can send our crews out to do these assessments fairly quickly. I believe it was less than a week that it took to do here in Westwood, and we get the results back about a month later. So, and again, it gives you these high-resolution photographs, which me, for a pavement manager, the photographs are worth 1,000 words. So very, very useful information to be able to figure out what the town's infrastructure and where it is. So again, as Todd mentioned, the overall rating that we found for the road network was an 87.2. And what this reflects is this is a 0 to 100 rating system. And what it reflects is a very, very high level of service here in the town of Westwood. So as Todd mentioned, I've worked in, over 100 communities throughout New England on these road ratings. And I'd say that, Westwood is in the top 5% of the ratings that we've seen for an overall network. On the bottom, it kind of shows you the breakdown of how many miles of roadway fall into each repair category. So again, 0 to 100 rating scale, and that allows us to put each segment of roadway into a repair category. So you can see 41 miles of roadway don't need any maintenance right now. Extremely high amount in terms of the overall percentage of road miles. And you can see the breakdown going down in the major rehabilitation, very small percentage, 0.64 miles of roadway in that category. So just my last slide in closing out, and I'll obviously answer any questions, but in talking with Todd, we wanted to give you folks a flavor of what's to come in 2022. So this is the preliminary road list that we put together that we're going to bid here in the spring and construct over the summertime. So just, I'm not going to go down the entire list, but you can see on the right-hand side, we did a small map showing where we anticipate doing work this year. And this final list may change based on available funding and the contractor pricing that we get through the bid process. So with that, I'll hand it back to Todd, see if he wants to touch on anything on this slide in particular.
Yeah, Conrad's, I believe the list is showing right now. I'm just working off my phone here, but everything's advertised as well online. All the notifications have been sent out well over a year ago to all the butters that will be affected by these projects, along with the utility companies. So I mean, it's really become a well-oiled machine as far as what we're doing annually. We're forever working on trying to improve our program and trying to forecast as best we can, trying to give Pam and her team as much notice of what, our projects consist of, and, what additional funding would be necessary as the years progress. So, and we're just extremely proud of this. We're proud of a lot of what we've accomplished over the years within the department, but this is, one of the feathers in the cap for us to be able to say that we're up this high based on what our most recent score comes in at. And I always tell Conrad, as the 3 years come up again, I say, just please tell us we're going to be at the top of the list of every community in the Commonwealth. And we're getting near the top, if not at the top right now. So.
Todd, it really does speak to the quality of the roads, though, because looking at this list, some of these are in pretty decent shape as we sit here. And I guess I'm wondering, is there an average length in between each, so if I were to take Fearing Drive as an example, do you know roughly like what would be the average time frame from its last repaving?
But roughly, John, I would say about 12 years is a fair estimate from what I've observed over the years with what we're getting for a product from the plants. And obviously it's subject to weather, number one, the variables of what type of weather have we had over that, time frame, amount of traffic as well. We've gone in and we've done some really and I would never call them a Band-Aid by any means, but a deliberate, temporary fix of a roadway surface. And the expectancy of the measure that we took was the intention was a few years. And all of a sudden it held true for about 7 years, but relative to the amount of traffic it was seeing in that particular location. But for the most part, John, I think a fair bet is 12 years. And it's something I've been working on internally in the office, is really developing a plan that we could look at every single roadway in town and look at it over a 12-year cycle, assuming all we did was mill and overlay, which is not what you want to do, but taking it to the highest degree from a budget standpoint. And that was based off a 12-year cycle of what I put together. It's very preliminary right now. Obviously, things are so subject to change, and, God forbid there's a water main break or something comes up. I mean, things have to always be on the fly, but 12 years is a safe play.
Thank you.
Conrad, thank you for the data. I mean, I love this data-driven approach, Todd, that you're taking with how you're prioritizing things, and clearly the leadership that you've shown on that over the years is resulting in great grades. So I think it was fantastic presentation and very helpful information.
Awesome.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Connor. And so my only request, Todd, is please make sure you check with Eversource. They've dug up my streets at least a dozen times in the last year. So, and I know that's on the list. So just make sure that they're straightened out once and for all. They dig about a gas leak up about every 3 weeks. So appreciate that.
Yeah, they had that entire neighborhood, Mike, off of Downey Street and everything behind the Downey School has definitely been on our radar, and I've been in contact with them because I know there's been several residents that have called regarding that. So that's going to be that's definitely a priority over there with respect to their work and their ongoing efforts over there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we don't want to do this work and then have them come in again. But anyway, thank you.
No.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Moving along on our agenda. Pam, I know you don't just come to visit and say hello. You really have some work to do here. So Pam has a financial update for us on our FY23 budget.
Yes, good evening, everyone. We are in that working session and season of budget. So if I can just share my screen and just go through some material. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes.
And I'll just move along quickly, but to give you an update on where we are with the budget and look at some numbers in some area, and then we'll continue to work and come back at your meeting later in the month with more information. But first, we just always remind everyone that we've been into several of your meetings, going through material. We've been into the Finance and Warrant Commission, working with them. And then again, this is our current month, really working at putting together our budgets, our capital budgets, the initial request, the municipal budget, putting together our overall budget, including with the school budget. Just a quick reminder that each year the board works really hard to make sure that the budgets presented to town meeting and approved by FinCom and approved by ultimately by town meeting are very structurally well balanced, and they're designed to protect against the unforeseen. And so just as a reminder, our town meeting has really been on board with that and approved very structurally sound budgets. That means we don't inflate our revenue. We're very conservative with our revenue projections. We don't use any one-time subsidies to fund our budget. That very critical action that town meeting took a number of years ago to put the meals and hotel tax revenue into a separate fund and not into our ongoing operating budget. During what's been some relatively good budget years the last few years, town meeting helped us in purposely building our reserve accounts to target level. So really, we're designed to help us maintain our essential services during any rainy day disruption, which certainly the last couple of years we've seen that, and may continue to see in the year ahead. We have reminded people that both FY21 last year that closed out and FY22 in our current year, we've been able to weather the COVID financial impact. We have not had any cuts to state aid, which has been a significant positive in dealing with this. We've not had to use our reserve accounts to fund any of our COVID expenses. We talk about we've had significant additional COVID expenses for school and municipal departments, and we've been fortunate to have outside funding that's been able to cover all that. Again, this is a slide we've looked at with COVID, but really for as impactful as that has been on delivery of service on a financial basis, we're really okay.
Sorry, are you advancing your slides?
Yes.
Anybody else not advancing?
Yeah, no, we're only seeing the budget.
Yeah, we're just seeing the cover slide.
We have it, so we can flip to ours.
Oh, I'm sorry.
For those that are at home, they might not be able to see all the wonderful work that you did.
I'm gonna just maybe share it one more time and see. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, thank you, Rob.
I thought
she was just giving us a preview.
I apologize. I'll try once more here.
There you go. Okay.
Can you see that?
Yes, you're there.
Yeah, we can see it
Okay,
now.
I apologize for that. Okay, and these first slides are all slides that the board has seen. And so the only item to mention that we've talked about is, with COVID related costs, as we're developing the 23 budget for school and municipal, doesn't start till July 22 and run through the following June of 23. We at this point don't know if we'll still be dealing with some COVID cost or impact costs. So we have asked our departments, including the school department, not to include any of those costs in their ongoing budgets. And if we do see some additional costs, if this continues on, we'll continue to deal with that kind of with one-time funding, outside funding, our own town reserves or free cash. And unless they're really something that they consider will be an ongoing cost, that you will not see those in the operating budgets. Just quickly, I mentioned we've been able to build our reserves to appropriate levels. This chart shows what we currently have in our stabilization account, our main savings account. The balance shown in green currently is 3.72 million, right in line with what our target needs to be. And again, we did not have to use any of this to get through kind of the last couple of budget years with COVID, either to pay for COVID impact costs or to cover for any reduction in state aid, because we did not have that. We looked at this slide last time, the overall budget goals, trying to maintain important services for the community, maintain our important level of capital investment. The board has done an excellent job with capital over the last couple of years. And when you see and hear from Todd, it's really clear. You can see the results of your increased funding in that area. So we'll continue on with the efforts that you've done the last couple of years in developing an overall comprehensive budget that reaches all of the areas that we need to. When we start to look forward, we're looking first at the revenue side. This is the current revenue budget, $108 million in the current year, FY22. That was a 2.5% increase over the prior year. So this is the budget approved by our last town meeting. 80% of that funded by taxes, and we've gone through that. That's very typical for a suburban community. It is a challenging model to work under, but we are, primarily funded by tax revenue. As we look to calculate that tax revenue for FY23 budget, it's clearly a strict formula. That's just how Prop 2.5 works. This is the slide that shows how our revenue, real estate tax revenue, can be developed. It's strictly a formula that starts from your prior year. You're allowed to add in a 2.5% increase, add in your estimates for new growth, add in what you'd be raising in exempt debt, principal and interest for any bonds outside 2.5, and you come to an amount that's the maximum amount that you can raise in the budget. Not the amount you have to raise, but the maximum amount that you'd be allowed to raise in the FY23 budget. So we know our taxes by this formula. Again, we always point out the town has not taxed to the maximum capacity in a number of years. This line here shows our excess levy, ranging from 800,000 to 1.1 million in the current year. So where the budget did not utilize all of the revenue available. The town has not had a general override since 2007. And as we've talked about many, many times, this exempt debt here in FY23 includes our last payment for the high school bond. So we are in the last budget year of that bond, a 20-year bond, wonderful accomplishment for our residents to be completing that. So our main source of revenue we know and comes from this chart. Our next source of revenue is state aid. It's about 6% of our total revenue budget. This bar chart shows our state aid over the last several years. In green, the current year, about $6.6 million. You can see that it's just been very steady, not really much of an increase, but also no declines or disruptions, even during the years with COVID. The state at some point thought they would have significant problems with their budget with COVID. They still committed to maintaining level state aid and not cutting in mid-year, which is very disruptive for us. And so it's really been, quite steady. If we look back, this chart on the bottom shows a longer term history of state aid. So you can see from about FY13 on, it's just been this very steady, kind of mild, consistent small but steady growth each year. You can see in the previous years, if we look back from FY97 to about FY13, we had kind of this roller coaster effect where we'd get increases in state aid, the state would have some bad budget years, would get cuts, and then we'd pump up again, get cut down again. That's, kind of hard to deal with in our budget process, especially with any mid-year cuts. That's very hard for us to kind of absorb. But again, our recent history, and shown more clearly on the top graph, has been just very steady aid. And so we expect that too going forward for FY23. Just quickly, this is a slide the board has seen. Free cash is another source of funding for our budget. That's an amount we get certified each year by Department of Revenue. Once we close out the previous year, it's then available for town meeting to use. The select board has been very disciplined in our use of state aid, of free cash. The bars here, the blue shows the amount certified each year in free cash, and the green is what we use. So in the budget. So select board has been very disciplined in using what's in line with our financial policies. And we only apply this to capital budgets or other one-time needs or one-time articles at town meeting. So for example, in our current budget, $2.3 million of school and municipal capital was funded with free cash, $125,000 for a transfer to our stabilization, and then some one-time articles at town meeting, including some snow and ice supplement and a street acceptance article. So with this free cash we had certified for this most recent year, we are right in line with being able to do a similar amount for capital and other miscellaneous articles for the upcoming FY23 budget. Finally, just a super quick look. This is the slide on meal and hotel tax. We looked at this at your last meeting. We did, right after your last meeting, get our most recent quarter, which ended on December 30th. So on December 30th, we received for meals $119,000 and for hotels $81,000. So now the green bar here shows you 2 quarters for year to date in FY22. The meals on the left and the hotel tax on the right. So we are in line in the current year. It looks like to be back just about where we were in FY19 pre-pandemic. Those amounts had dropped during COVID, as obviously these the meals and restaurants were impacted by COVID. And I will just point out that the hotel, this 81,000 here, the state had let hotels delay turnover of payment of that tax for a bit. That delay period during COVID ended. So I don't know if this number here is a catch-up number or if that will be our level going forward, but it does look like we're back on track with those, at least to our pre-pandemic level. And just one other quick thing with the meals and hotels. So our balance at the end of the year in June 30th was 1.2 million. Currently, with what we've received for our first 2 quarters, this half of the current year, our balance is 1.5 million. And so that funding is available for town meeting. And again, as we've shown and talked about, we use those for kind of larger town-wide capital projects, field replacement, pool projects, HVAC projects, larger capital outside of kind of our normal routine capital budget process. So looking ahead at FY23, and again, we're continuing to work on the budget, but on the revenue side, as I mentioned, taxes are our biggest source of revenue. We know by that formula what our available taxes increase will be. It's about $2.1 million per that 2.5% increase, $550,000 for our estimates for new growth. And then the 1.1 million is available, that amount that was unused in the current year. So if we want to utilize the full levy, this is the amount we have. Looking at state aid, our initial projection is to level fund that at what we are receiving in the current year. The governor does come out with his budget at the end of this month. He also always previews that budget at the MMA meeting, which is, I believe, the 20th or so. Is that right, Chris? 21st of January?
Yes, it's currently scheduled for Thursday, the 21st and Friday, the 22nd.
Okay. So we'll get our initial look then, thank you, at the governor's budget. And typically we might incorporate his projection into our budget estimate at this point. Local receipts are another revenue category. We project that to be level funded. That's our typical projections and conservative revenue projection in that category. With free cash, as I mentioned, we have 7.2 million certified by Department of Revenue. We're going to make sure to continue to use that as we currently do for our financial policies. That will allow us to do about 2.3 million for the base school and municipal capital, the 125,000 for stabilization, and then we will have some additional funding available for other capital beyond that base, and still be able to maintain our balance of about 3.5 million per our financial policies. And then finally, as I mentioned, the meal and hotel tax fund currently have about 1.5 million in that account that would be available for the select board to look at towards capital projects for town meeting. Again, we used about 1 million last year to do some additional projects. And then just a quick look on the expense side. Again, starting with where are we in the current year? This pie chart shows our total expenditures approved by town meeting, $108 million, or again, 2.5% over the previous year. The largest area of our spending, almost 70%, shown in the blue, is just the school and municipal operating budgets. What we do each year to deliver those core services to the community. In yellow, our fixed cost is about 17% of the budget, debt service about 6%. So clearly our main area is those core services being delivered out to the community by the school and municipal departments. And the primary driver of those budgets are the staffing. Municipal and school operations are staffing-driven organizations, and almost 80% of those budgets are in staffing. Teachers, firefighters, police officers are DPW employees. So with those core budgets, our goal is always to provide high-quality services to the community, maintain budget stability for those departments, but also look for sustainable budgets. So we always strive not to grow those budgets beyond what we can sustain on an ongoing basis and fund with ongoing revenue. We do point out that just for discussion purposes and budgets, each 1% increase for our school and municipal budget is about $725,000. And that's just driven with 500,000 for the school and about 223,000 for municipal. So a 2.5% increase to those budgets, 1.8 million, a 3% increase, 2.1 million. So it's very quickly, even though the 1, 2, 3% increase sounds small, those add up quickly in real dollars, again, because they are such a large component of our overall spending. This graph just shows further the breakdown of that current year operating budget with the school in blue and municipal in red. We always kind of look at the history of our budget increases in those areas. And the select board really has promoted over the last several years in sustainable moderate growth, which has given those budgets enough growth to make sure they're delivering those quality improvements to our residents, retain our staffing in those departments, but that we're able to fund within our budget, within Prop 2.5, and we can sustain on an ongoing basis. So we are looking for the FY23 budget to be in that similar range, that similar budget range of about 3.5% increase. Just a quick look at that fixed cost budget. As I mentioned, that's almost about 17–18% of our overall budget. And these are the budgets that cover all of the employee benefit costs for school and municipal. So our pensions, our health insurance, our payroll taxes. We also have in here some shared accounts, things that provide for both school and municipal operations, such as our comprehensive insurance, our audits, things like that. We have our trash service budget in here in this fixed cost category, and then as also some townwide reserves. So the select board reserve accounts, the FinCom reserve accounts. So we've itemized those here in total $18.6 million. Obviously, with the biggest piece of that 15 million in that employee benefit cost. And just a quick look at that current budget, 15.4 million employee benefits. About 56% of that is the school and 44% municipal. That's just the general breakdown. The schools have, far greater number of employees than the municipal budget, so they do have more of the cost in that area. However, I will point out one thing is that the school pension costs, cost for the pension obligation for teachers is not paid for by municipalities. So we do pay for the Norfolk County pension, and that covers all non-teaching staff, both in school and municipal budgets. But the teacher's pension is paid by the state. And we're very fortunate that that's the arrangement, because in the current year, that pension obligation just for Westwood teachers is $14 million. So this would be an even higher split on the school side if we were assuming that pension obligation. And again, it's just very fortunate for us that that's a state obligation, as it is for all communities, and not something we have to provide for in our budget. So just a quick look at the projected growth in this category, because we really look and say we have to pay for these costs first before we can look at what we can do for school and municipal. And right now, our initial estimate to that total fixed cost budget is about a 6.6% increase, or $1.2 million. That's what it's going to cost us for that pool of expenses for FY23. Looking first at the pension, and again, this is just Norfolk County, we know we have an increase of 7.3%. Of $445,000. We've already received that assessment from Norfolk. They are on a mandated schedule to fully fund the liability. They have to have their liability assessed every other year, and then they have to distribute that cost out to the communities. This is a bit higher than it's been. Last year, this increase was about 5.9%. So this is a little bit higher and results in a higher dollar amount that we need to set aside for that. Looking at health insurance, our current estimate is a 7% increase, or about $475,000. At this point, this is an estimate only. This is just an estimate. Last year, our health insurance went up about 5%. We're carrying the 7% at this point is the recommendation, but we will get updated information on this as we move forward in the budget process. So the town purchases our insurance through the GIC, the State Group Insurance Commission. They have two important meetings in the spring where health costs are updated. In February, they work on their updated plans and any changes they're making to any plans. They set the final rates in March. And so right away in March, when those rates are set, we know we can take that, put the rates on our current distribution of employees on the various plans, and know what our actual increase will be. So I do believe we're at the upper end here with the 475 or the 7%. We will monitor that. We will not have any updated information until March, but at that point, we will relook at this. Hopefully we'll be able to bring that down a bit. The trash budget, a smaller increase than it's been in previous years. That has settled down a little bit. You remember we had some disruption to that industry and that budget over the last couple of years. Right now, about a 2% increase, or $36,000. Some of our other fixed cost category, insurance, Medicare, payroll tax, 5% increase, or $150,000. The OPEB appropriation, we've been increasing for a number of years, $25,000 a year. That's the funding schedule that the select board set a number of years ago. We've been able to maintain that. So we will set aside the $25,000. And then one other category that we're working on is some newer items in that shared cost category, where the town is looking to work, the town and school, to continue to increase our efforts in our energy conservation and our sustainability efforts, and also kind of townwide communications. Both the school and town does a lot of efforts to get information out to our residents in all kinds of different formats. We are currently setting aside an $80,000 increase to these efforts. But as the board knows, from having Tom Philbin in and the DPW in, money we invest here and kind of the energy and sustainability efforts, we get back multifold through various grants that these efforts have helped us get, both through kind of the NSTAR and state programs, also really helping us control some of the energy costs, what we're paying for utility costs in town and school budgets. So I know Chris has been working with the WEAC committee on some of this. He's been talking with the superintendent on this effort. So we'll continue to get you some more information on this, but this is kind of a new investment that we feel should be included in the budget to kind of continue to give us some good payback on these efforts. Finally, just looking at capital. So this slide shows what our base capital has been for school and municipal the last several years. And as I mentioned, you can see by the chart clearly, the select board has done an excellent job in increasing what we're spending on our base capital to maintain our buildings, to maintain our equipment, to maintain our infrastructure throughout town. Clearly, you can see the results of that increased investment. So we do recommend for the FY23 budget that we continue with that same level that we've been able to do the last couple of years. And then in addition to that base capital, we've talked with the board about how there's been since FY17 some additional capital put forth at town meeting to capture things above that base, things that are bigger that don't necessarily fit into those articles that we'd like to get done. And this shows the funding that's occurred in each of those, in that article in each of the several years that we've had this. Most recent year, FY22, just over $1 million. We are proposing that would be able to do at least the same for FY23 as shown in green. And this is funded either with free cash or the meal and hotel tax or some combination. So we certainly are in a position to continue to invest in the town's infrastructure and to make necessary improvements to our capital. And then just quickly, we looked at this slide at your last meeting, but we've talked about how Westwood has multiple senior tax programs available. And we have many seniors participating in all of these programs. We have the state exemptions that people can take advantage of, the tax deferral program, the senior work-off program, and then importantly, the aid to the elderly program, where the town has the most generous program in the state, giving out over $100,000 a year to about 55 residents each year, getting about $1,800 to $2,000 or $2,500 a year right to their tax bill, pays about 25% of their tax bill. We are looking in the 23 budget proposal to increase the funding that we have for the aid to the elderly. So we have in the last several years utilized about $50,000 from the select board's reserve account and use that to supplement donations to the program. We are looking in the budget to set aside an additional up to $300,000 from our free cash to expand what we're able to do in the aid to the elderly program. So not only to increase what we can give to residents currently in the program, but to increase the number of people that can be served, as well as we go forward over the next couple of years, help these residents with any impact that they might see from the new school project. And again, this program utilizes the state guidelines, utilizes the state tax, Massachusetts tax circuit breaker for the income, which all of these programs use. So that's about 61,000, I think, for in the current year, but we utilize the state guidelines as far as who's eligible to participate. There's some income guidelines, there's no asset restriction. And again, it's a very, very successful program that the town's had in place for a long time that gets direct relief to our senior residents. So those are what we're looking at in the budget. Again, the next few weeks is really a heavy working period for us. We'll pull in the state budget. We'll get the initial capital budgets to the select board. We've been working on the municipal budgets, and Chris and I have been going through those and meeting with the departments. A little bit of more work to do on that, but we will have that ready for you at your next meeting. As I mentioned, we'll get the initial look at state aid from the governor's budget at the end of January. And we're on target to have the initial proposed document around February 1st, which would include the municipal budget, the initial capital articles and incorporate the overall budget summary. I do know that the school budget is on track. I believe the school committee meeting is Thursday night, that the school budget will be presented, and they are within our overall guidelines to be able to fund their budget requests within this overall budget summary. And then again, we would be presenting this initial budget to the FinCom on February 8th. So a couple more weeks of heavy work to put this together, but I think we are in good shape to again get to the select board kind of a comprehensive budget that addresses lots of the different areas that need attention in the overall budget. That is it.
Thank you, Pam. So Pam, I had a question for you. So when I was looking at that, so what makes the pension contribution to like Norfolk County, what makes that go up so much from year to year or vary so much year to year? Do you know what the factors are?
Yeah, so the state about 15, I want to say 15, yeah, 15, 17 years ago, did a pension reform program that put all pension systems in Massachusetts on a schedule to be fully funded within a 30-year period, which is really great. That was a huge problem for municipalities nationwide, that these pension systems were not funded. Part of that reform included an increase in what the contribution is from employees to their own pension out of their payroll each pay period. But it also means it requires pension systems to have a liability update every other year. So every other year they have to go in and have an actuary assess their liability, and then they have to set their assessment out to communities to make sure they stay on track to be fully funded. Norfolk County, our pension, I believe, will be fully funded in the year 2031.
Yeah,
Which
so-
may sound it's far off, but it's really on the horizon for us.
So is the variable like how many people retire, how many people, are not, passed away and not going to retire? What makes the variable?
It takes in all of that. It takes in their market results of the investments of their current funding. It does take into account what's happening with the staffing, enrollment, and salaries, and actuarial tables for lifetime, that type of thing. It's all of that.
Okay.
But of that amount we're paying to Norfolk each year, so about $6 million in the current year, almost 70% of that is toward the unfunded liability. So that's what we're paying to kind of make up for all those years in prior history that we weren't fully funding, where everyone was only paying for what the current retirees at that point needed for their pensions. So 30-year schedule, we have about 8 years left on that. That will be a tremendous difference when we stop paying for that unfunded portion. But it is a big hit, can be a big hit to the budget. It's been in the range of 5 to 9% over the last several years. So last year was a 5%, this year it's 7%, but we are required to make that.
Okay, thank you. John, any questions?
No, Pam, thank you. That was great.
Rob, any questions?
No, Pam, again, awesome. One question regarding the senior tax relief. Have we ever had a situation where somebody applied for relief and was not able to be granted relief?
No, not due to funding. We sometimes have people just very, very rarely, but people apply who are really not eligible for that program for different reasons that maybe we can point them to something else. But we've never had a situation where we've not had the funding for them.
Great.
All right, Pam, hold on one second. There's someone who has a question for you, and I'm typing to them. If they would just type it, we'll present it to you. Let's see. Let's see if there are any questions. She types. And if you would be kindly put your name as you type in at the end of the question so we can identify whom is asking the question, although I have a pretty good idea.
So Pam, while that question's being typed, you feel we have all, some good levers to pull if there were ever some economic shock you pointed to past history when maybe there was a less consistent funding from state. Do you feel like we've got the appropriate reserves to be able to weather any potential economic storm?
Yes, over the last 10 to 12 years, our select board has presented really balanced budgets to town meeting, which our town meeting has supported. Our town meeting has supported building our reserves to appropriate levels, maintaining, moderate growth to budgets. The last time we had a real economic downturn, 2010 and 11, we did not have tools to help us through that. And we had 2 years where we had 0 increases in budgets for our school and municipal budgets. And that does not result in being able to maintain the same level of service to the community. In the 10 to 12 years since then, our select board has worked really hard to put tools in place. So we have now really pulled out of our budgets over the years. Any one-time subsidies are gone. The select board has really worked to limit the growth each year in the budgets to moderate increases that we can sustain. And that's not always easy to do because there's always more we'd like to do. But the select board has done that and been disciplined. We, do not spend all of that free cash. We spend it on one-time use capital, but we always maintain money, which could be there to help us if we saw a downturn. And then our reserve accounts. We have an appropriate amount now in our reserves, which not only helps us with our credit rating, but is there if we need to. And I know some of the select board members will remember at the start of the pandemic when it looked like the state was going to have serious revenue problems and that we might get hit in state aid. We knew we had money in our reserve account that would help us ride through that. We wouldn't have to go out and lay off a whole bunch of teachers and police and fire, which we didn't want to do and disrupt service. We ended up not having to use that reserve because the state was able to hold on our state aid. But we do have better tools in place now through a lot of hard work that the board's done over the last 10 years.
All right, so Pam, we do have a question for you from Sandra Castellini from 34 Birch Street. She says, obviously, we don't want to decrease salaries of essential personnel. So instead of increasing 2.5%, can we do less? And she wanted you to go to page 8 of your presentation and explain how the new school will increase taxes and where could we look to reduce regular tax increases to offset the large increase of the new school. I don't know if that's possible, but that's the question that she's posed to you. And I don't know that there is really an answer because I think our overall benefits are about 2.5% every year. And if we're able to do more, we are able to do more. So page 8, I guess.
Yep, so I don't have information on this slide of the new school. We've had that on separate presentations multiple times, but the school was approved as a debt exemption. So when that debt starts to come online, it will be in this line here. Can you all see the text?
Yeah, we can.
Page, yeah. So that's where the debt will come online. And as we presented to town meeting, the high school debt will drop out of here. The new debt will come online here. It's not coming on in 23, and it will come on in pieces in the years after that going forward. So that's where the exempt debt comes on. When we look here at, I believe the question is saying, can we reduce what we use in these tax increases to somehow offset the exempt debt increase?
Yes.
I think as you look through the rest of the presentation, the increases that come here under the formulas with 2.5 are very limited in relation to what we look at for spending. And I'll point out, so the 2.5% gives us 2.1% increase. I'm just gonna, our school budget alone, each 1% costs $500,000. So for our school budget to go up 3%, that's 1.5 million, assuming they're almost absorbing all of the increase that's allowed under 2.5. So it's really very difficult for us to maintain these core services, not lay off staff each year, without using those increases provided under 2.5.
Right, and that's at a 1.5% increase, right? Okay. Thank you. I think that answers the question. Yes, are all of our questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Appreciate your presentation as always, succinct and helpful. So thank you.
We'll be back at the end of the month again with some of those specifics on the municipal budget and the capital request. Thank you for your time tonight.
All right, thank you for joining us, Pam. Okay, so now we move on to our new business. And first up, an old sore thumb that we have. So we have the Obed Baker House, and I mean with all due respect, but it has been around since I've been on the select board, wondering what we could do with it. And Nora's here to talk about a bid review that we went out on the RFP. So Nora, would you like to take it away?
Sure. So this is actually the sixth time that the town has issued an RFP for the Obed Baker House. The first one, I believe, was in 2014, and we did it several times over the years between then and now. The most recent RFP, request for proposals, was issued in October of 2021. The bids were due on December 6th of 2021, and we received one proposal. That proposal was from Todd Sullivan. The minimum bid price was listed in the RFP at $150,000. The proposal proposed a price of $320,000. The proposal calls for the historic renovation and reuse of the existing Obed Baker House, including a historically sensitive addition to the rear of that building. The proposal would be to convert the building into 2 residential units, one on the first floor and one on the second floor. And the proposal also calls for demolition of the existing cemetery building, construction of a new cemetery building on adjacent town-owned land, and the construction of a 4,000 square foot commercial structure to the northeast of the Obed Baker House on vacant town land that was part of the request for proposals, which that building would be proposed for use as a veterinary clinic. So I believe Todd Sullivan is participating and can answer any specific questions you might have about his proposal.
He is here, yes. I know he has his camera and his microphone off, but he is here. He has provided us some drawings and some proposals in our package.
Todd?
There he is. At least his microphone is on now.
There we go.
There he
There
is.
he is.
Got it.
So Todd, would you like to explain a little bit more about your proposal and your thoughts for this property?
Well, it's basically, the project will be in 3 phases, well, 3 components. One would be, as Nora just explained, to renovate and add to the Obed Baker House. And it would be completely residential. Even though we're looking to get a mixed use zone, we decided the best way to work with the existing structure is to just maintain its residential use and build a, the veterinary building would be only for commercial use. So it'd be, 4,000 feet of space on the first floor with the appropriate 16 spaces that would be located approximately where the existing parking and existing cemetery shed is presently. And the third component would be to build a new cemetery shed out behind the Mackenzie building. I met with Todd Korchin and Brendan, and we walked the site last fall, and we all agreed that that would be the best spot for it. Appears to be enough land, and the similar size footprint shed could get built there, and that's basically it. The other part of the project is cleaning up the bordering vegetated wetland. If permitted by Concom, we'd right now that the bordering land is in pretty rough shape. It's strangled with invasive vines, bittersweet, poison ivy, and so all the trees that are along the wetland are getting strangled and they're dying off. So that would be another part. I think you can see that if in your packet. It's got a site plan that's pretty cohesive. So if there's any questions by the board members, I asked my architect and my civil engineer, the architects, RBL architects from Newton, and my civil engineers, site design professionals, they're out of Sharon. So they did the design work for the cemetery shed and the work on the Obed Baker building, and they did the lot layout. So if there's any questions that you guys have, feel free to ask.
I guess for me, the only question I had, Nora or Todd, maybe you can help me with, is just what will be the buffer between your project and the cemetery space? I just don't want to just do anything that would disturb the visuals from the cemetery.
So currently there is a vegetative buffer between the Obed Baker house and the cemetery. There are substantial trees that block the view when you're at the cemetery of the back of the cemetery barn and the Obed Baker house. This proposal does not call for the disturbance of those trees. The parking area that Todd would build to accommodate the veterinary building would be essentially where the Obed Baker house is now. So the trees that are behind that would not be moved. There would be trees removed on the adjacent land. So if you're on High Street and you're looking at the Obed Baker house, to the right, there's a partially cleared field, but there are some trees behind that field. Some of those would have to be removed in order to construct the veterinary building, but it would not be a substantial difference, and I don't believe any portion of it would be visible from the cemetery. But I think that's something that we would need to confirm as we reviewed more advanced designs for this project. I will point out that the initial plans were developed by Todd over the course of the last more than a year, and they received initial review by the town planner and by conservation, by both the conservation agent, and then there was a discussion, an informal discussion at a conservation commission meeting. So everyone has taken an initial look at this. I've also reviewed the proposal with Michelle Miller to confirm that it is consistent with the request for proposals. But at this stage, it's the select board that makes a determination of whether or not they want to consider Todd the designated developer and move forward with this project. One other
Yeah, I mean, I think the project is great, Todd. I think it's really exciting. It's a creative use of the space.
One other thing I wanted to point out to the board is that this would require 2 articles at town meeting. One would be an article for the disposition of the property that would require a 2/3 vote for passage. The other would be a rezoning of the property. There are 2 parcels there now. The one that the historic home sits on is zoned for commercial use. It's part of the local business A zone. The adjacent parcel that's vacant is zoned for residential use. So the proposed zoning amendment, which has been initially discussed by the planning board and requested as a warrant article, and will be further discussed at their February 1st hearing, that zoning article calls for changing the zoning designation of the residential property to local business A, and then overlaying the flexible multiple use overlay district 7 on both of those parcels. The planning board article actually goes further than that and proposes overlaying the FMUOD 7 on the adjacent Mackenzie property as well. But for the purposes of the Obed Baker RFP, it's really just those 2 parcels, the Obed Baker house and the adjacent town-owned land, that would need that overlay district in order to allow for this mixed use development. So it's mixed use on the property as a whole, but one building would be solely residential, one building would be solely commercial. The FMUOD allows that as long as no more than 50% of the overall property is residential. In this case, it's less than 50%. It would be residential.
Yeah, no, thank you for that.
So I guess, one question as I look at the design, so would they, people using the Benton area, is that road wide enough? I'm coming out of the cemetery. I know right now it's just a one-way. Would you have to widen the road to be able to get back to the parking for the vet clinic?
So it is used currently as 2-way as access to the Obed Baker house and to the cemetery garage. So there are vehicles that travel in both directions. It is a narrow road. And I think that's something that the planning board would need to look at when they review this to see whether or not that road should be widened. It's a site drive, really. It's not an actual road. It provides access to the existing Obed Baker house. And I have been on it many times where 2 cars have passed, usually my car and the cemetery vehicle truck. and we have no trouble passing each other. So I think from a practical point of view, 2 cars can pass, but whether or not the planning board would prefer to see something wider with more significant traffic at that location, that would be up to the planning board. I will note that a veterinary clinic does not have extensive traffic. It's not like we're putting in a large scale restaurant at that location. So I don't think that the traffic would be intense, but it would certainly be more than the existing vacant home and the cemetery garage.
Right, okay. And I do like the fact that the vet clinic is gonna pretty much almost mirror the type of design for the Obed Baker house as well.
Todd made great efforts for very sensitive design, both of the renovation in addition to the rear of the Obed Baker house and the design of the veterinary building. So they both, I believe, are very appropriate to the location.
If I recall, Todd, you're reusing the doors from the existing cemetery shed in this new facility and sort of,
Yeah, we're gonna accommodate the existing doors. So basically the same size, Rob, that's there now, which is appropriate for the machinery that comes and goes. They've got a mini excavator and all the lawn mowing machines and whatnot. So they need access that's the same size as what they've got now.
And I know Todd just barely touched on this, but I do want to just emphasize that the condition of the vacant town-owned parcel next to the Obed Baker house with regard to invasive species and litter that's in the area is pretty significant. And so this proposal will not only allow for the reuse of the historic building and for an increase in commercial property in the town, but it will clean up a significantly disturbed area.
Nora, to shift the town on property will take 2/3, but the actual change on zoning is now only a majority.
So the change on zoning for this particular article would still be a 2/3.
Okay,
2/3 vote. It's changing a residential zone to a commercial zone and then overlaying the commercial property with an overlay district. So the reduced vote capacity for zoning amendment articles are when those articles produce additional housing.
I see, okay.
So Rob and Michael, the proposed action tonight was for us to consider naming Mr. Sullivan. I mean, I'm prepared to make a motion naming him as the designated developer. Are we ripe for that motion, or do we need a second meeting on this?
I don't think so, but let me ask Mr. Ahern. I learned from a prior selectman a long time ago to ask town council whether or not he's had a chance to review this and whether or not it complies with the RFP.
I have had a chance to review it, Mr. Chairman, and I believe it does comply with the RFP.
Okay,
It looks like he did a good job checking all the boxes.
excellent, thank you. I'm okay with it. I don't know, Mr. Gotti, do you have any reservations?
I would have no reservation whatsoever, John, if you wanted to make that motion.
Okay, so I will move that the board name Mr. Todd Sullivan as the designated developer for the Obed Baker House Rehabilitation and Reuse Project, and for the select board to include placeholders for an Obed Baker House disposition article and an Obed Baker house zoning amendment article on the warrant for the May 2022 annual town meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, Mr. Hickey,
Aye.
Mr. Gotti,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Careful what you wish for, Mr. Sullivan, so.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, board.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks,
Enjoy your time away.
I will. Thanks. We'll see you.
Thank you. All right, so next up on our review is the Charter Review Committee appointments. I don't know if you've had a chance. I know Tish sent us out the list of the prior individuals and whether or not you've had a chance to make some phone calls or potential designees. And so I'll open it up. Mr. Hickey, we'll start with you. Have you had a chance at all?
I do not have a nominee. Can we defer on this till the next meeting, or is that too late? Unless you guys have people. I mean, I'm fine, but I do not have any names. I looked at the list from last time.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely some people from last time. Some have moved out of town, right? Some aren't available in Westwood. There's definitely some people on that list before. I don't know if anybody's reached out to ask them if they would do it again. Dottie, have you spoken to anybody?
I've had 2 conversations of folks who are willing to do it, one of which was on the committee last time. Peter Cahill has graciously volunteered to participate, doesn't want to chair, but would be happy to be a member of that committee. And then I actually had 2 other conversations. One is just looking to get a little bit more information on the time commitment to make sure that she can adequately serve. And the other is willing to do so. So I have a couple and would be happy to nominate, but also willing to wait if you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, I prefer we get a list to Tish and we nominate like a slate, right? Rather than us just do ad hoc names at the meeting. But that's just my preference. I'll do whatever you all want.
Oh, that's reasonable.
Well, since I made some phone calls and I have not heard back yet, I'm willing to defer this to our next meeting. I know we just got the list, and Dottie, thank you for joining us, Madam Clerk. Thank you. And so I've reached out to a couple of people that have not heard back yet. I do understand, am I not mistaken, Mr. Coleman, that Mr. Fitzgerald has agreed to serve again?
Yes, he has, Mr. Chair.
Okay, that's what I was hoping would
So
join again.
Paul was there before and as, assistant town legal counsel, so that would be helpful to begin with. Perhaps we might even reach out to him, Chris, and see if he has any nominations, but as I said, the original thought was maybe we could put a couple of people from different sides of the town, and different experiences to be able to contribute, some newer to the town and some that are, as I like to say, seasoned veterans and been here for a while to help formulate a good change moving forward in the charter.
So that's why I kind of had thought like a list will also make ensure that we have a cross section of demographics, age, length of time in living in town, things like that. And we also have a lot of people on boards and committees currently that I think could contribute. So I think if we defer it, we can come up with a great list.
How do you want to do this? You want to have us each send
Tish names?
Yeah, Tish names. Okay. And then distribute that before our next meeting?
Yes.
Great.
And so let's see, our next meeting is not until the 24th. So why don't we plan to try to get them to Tish no later than that Thursday before?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And see if we can't figure out exactly who we're going to appoint. I know we had talked about a number, and we know it definitely has to be an odd number. So I'm thinking maybe 7 would be a number to start and kind of hold there if we can, just because of logistically. And I know many hands make light work, but on the other hand, too many people make the meetings almost impossible. So, for whatever reason, I think the lower we keep the number, the more efficient it will be, and it will be easier to schedule meetings.
Mr. Chair, may I request something?
Yes, you can, Mr. Coleman.
Can I respectfully request that the board provide the list by Wednesday and not Thursday
Sure,
of that week,
we can do that.
or the 19th, please?
I believe we would be able to do that, yes.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, you joined us. Did you have anything you'd like to add or say since you took the time to come here this evening?
Thank you, Chairman Walsh. I do. I just wanted to let you know, Rob, you had asked about a time commitment for people. And typically, I would say from start to finish, the last review we had, it was about 2 years. We go through a whole cycle. You've got to go through town meeting, special legislation, and then you'll go to ballot. So from start to finish, it's probably at least a 2-year commitment.
Just to double click on that a little bit, give me a sense of frequency of meeting and typical duration of meetings.
Frequency of meeting would probably be, I would say once or twice a month, no more than that.
Okay.
And the chair, Paul Fitzgerald was the chair. I was on the bylaw review committee as well, which followed the charter review committee, and Paul was the chair of that. And we really got a lot of work done, and it depends on how in-depth we're going to get into the charter and what changes that we're going to anticipate. And, we want to interview all the departments, and, we want to just ensure that we're going to be making the right decisions with the group. And, so it really depends on how much of a change that we really foresee happening with the charter.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And
You're
so we have our assignments to be due no later to Tish than the 19th, and we will defer this to our next meeting on the 24th of January. Thank you very much, Dottie, for joining us. Okay, so moving along, the last thing that we have this evening is our initial warrant article discussion for the town meeting on May 3rd, I think it is this year, 2022. So we have, let's see here. We have no less than 10 for 34 articles, if I counted right, Tish, but
Yeah, I thought it was 33.
33,
I told you I'm a lawyer, but anyway.
33 articles.
So 33 articles that we have at the present time. We have 10 placeholders, although if we, Obed is already in on those, on the select board ones that we have. Obviously, we have 1 through 11 for budget. We have 2 citizens petitions. We have a street acceptance, and we have the 2, at least 1 for Obed Baker. Do we have the second one there for Obed Baker listed, or is that a placeholder?
There's like 4 or 5 placeholders, I think, right?
Yeah, so there's, right now, there's a miscellaneous 10, I believe. But we think that 2 of those are already gone, so there could be 8 placeholders.
Nor, I think the planning board includes the Obed Baker House, right? One of the planning board articles.
The planning board article included the Obed Baker House zoning, but I believe the disposition article is also listed on your list there.
Yes.
Would that be, that would be the mixed use and family residence overlay district, Nora?
Yes. No, that's the zoning one. Sorry, that's the one for the MBTA communities. Further on down, I don't
one that's
actually
listed as
have your.
planning board.
Number 3, okay, sorry,
Yeah.
thank you. Number 3, okay. So those are both there, but we have 10 miscellaneous listed for right now. I think that should be more than enough, I think, right now, and we can always withdraw them as we go forward, but if we don't save a place for them, we can't put them on the warrant. Is that right, Mr. Hearn?
It is correct, sir.
Okay. Any questions, comments, concerns?
No, we are scheduled to close the town meeting warrant this evening, though.
Yes, we are. And so I think that's all that we have at this point in time, right? So with that, I think we already closed it, John, if I'm not mistaken. We did
You
close
have
it at our
not.
last meeting.
Mm-mm.
No?
You have not.
Okay. So then we must.
Okay, so I'll make that motion. I move that the board vote to close the warrant, the 2022 warrant, which includes 33 proposed articles for the 2022 annual town meeting, and publish the draft article listing on the town's website.
I'll second that.
Okay, Mr. Hickey,
Aye.
Mr. Gotti,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Okay. Thank you. All right. Moving along under old business. No, we just closed the warrant. Okay. Now we have approval of minutes, but there were changes, Tish.
There were changes that I forwarded to you. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to review.
I did not today.
Okay.
Do you want to defer?
Yeah, if you don't mind, we'll just defer to the.
No, that's fine.
Okay. So that concludes our meeting, with the exception of the select board will be going to executive session this evening. We'll be going to an executive session to discuss 5 issues this evening pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, to discuss any further information would have a detrimental effect on the position of the governing body. The second, pursuant to Section 30A, Section 21A6, to discuss strategy with respect to the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. To disclose any further information would have a detrimental effect on the governing body. Third, pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A6, to discuss strategy with respect to the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property at 129 Dover Road. The fourth, pursuant to section 30A, section 21A3, to discuss added strategy with respect to general collective bargaining for union personnel. And finally, the fifth issue is to discuss pursuant to general laws, chapter 30A, section 22, to comply with any general law for review for executive session minutes, of which would have a detrimental effect on the governing body if discussion were held in open session. So we're going in for the 4 or 5 mentioned reasons. We will not be returning to open session. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
Michael, I'm sorry, before we do that, can I have the floor for a moment under
Yes,
other
you can. I
business?
forgot, Ms. Dickey. Forgive me.
No problem, no
I forgot.
problem. That's okay. I promise I won't make you read that again. You had mentioned earlier, today is the first day of this year's town election cycle. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to let the residents know that I will not be running for re-election this year. I am grateful to the residents for placing their trust in me for the past 6 years. And as I look around town and reflect on the financial status and our overall infrastructure, I'm grateful that I've had the opportunity to participate in all of these successes. I'll always contribute to Westwood. This has been a great town to my family and I, but political aspirations at this time are just not part of our portfolio. So I'm really grateful to all of you, to the past and the present members of the board, to Chris and to Pam, and of course Tish, who keeps me organized, and to Mr. Ahern, who provides the steady hand. We are really fortunate in this town to have such great engaged staff, and I thank all of you. And it's a little bit of a bittersweet feeling, but I'm grateful for the opportunity, and I wish you all the best. And I'll be here doing my advocacy through May, but I just wanted to state that tonight as we begin the new season of town meeting. So thank you all.
Thank you, John. It's been a good 6 years that we've been to continue to work together. We will miss you. And I do appreciate, I know that next week you've offered to step up for me as I have another commitment and will not be able to attend the FinCom. So thank you for stepping up. I appreciate that as always.
Thank you.
One thing we can say is over the years, we've had our differences, but we work as a team because we think that Westwood is the best and we work our way to continue to make sure that happens. So thank you for your contributions in the last 6 years. And I know you'll still be around anyway and helping us to help make those important decisions that come up from time to time. So thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so having previously stated our intention to go into executive session.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, you can, Mr.
sorry.
Ahern, of course.
I just want to congratulate John on a 6-year term. That seat means something special to me. You did very well, and the town is better for it, but I'm a little bit taken aback, but I guess the best thing I can say is Godspeed.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all of you. All right.
Appreciate you, John, because we know you're in a stage of life where we were talking about before we started, where you're going in a lot of different directions. And so can appreciate the number of plates you have spinning. And so thank you for everything that you've done for the entire time you've been on the board, and the leadership and sort of helping me get accustomed to being here.
Great. Maybe we should just keep this meeting going. I'm liking this. All right, I won't let it get to my head. Okay.
John, I'm going to say that you might, at this point in time, you might just want to keep going. But we know, listen, just because you're stepping away right now doesn't mean you won't be back.
Exactly. You'll rue the day. All right. Having previously stated our intention to go into executive session, I move that we go into executive session.
And I will second that.
All right, Mr. Hickey.
I vote aye.
Mr. Gotti.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. All right, everyone, we will see you again on January 24th. Please stay warm the next couple of days, and then we will be back to see you then. Thank you.
Thank you all. Good night.